Our speed control stripped down and ready for installation. We need to go ahead and figure out what our motor wire links are from the speed control to the motor. Motors we're running are the Supo 2212 11s, I believe, 1200 kV. Get them from Blue Sky RC. They're about 16 bucks a piece. They're a quality motor for very little price. Comes with all the mounting hardware we need. Use this cross. As you notice, when you print this out, the dimensions are all correct. All you have to do is lay this on our poplar square dowel rod and then mark the holes, drill it out, cut it, and you're good. As you can see, everything's already pre-marked for you. This is an additional hole that I put on there in case you want to use it for landing gear. This is the same 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch Delrin rod that we used, Delrin tubing that we used for the spacers. I am also going to use it, I'm going to drill a hole halfway through the arm and place the rod in the hole and leave about a 3.5 to 4 inch rod sticking out, which will, on each arm, which will act as landing gear. Simple, cheap, and if it breaks, it won't break an arm, but this is pretty durable. I think it'll be fine. So what we need to do is take the printout. You can either cut it all the way out and tape it on, which is what I'm going to do, or you can fold the paper on the lines and then place it on whatever you feel is convenient. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut as close to the line as possible without cutting inside or too far outside the line. You want to leave the line as much as possible. It's better to cut outside of the lines than it is to like come in too close and cut inside. But this is going to give us our length as well as the markings for the holes we're going to have to drill. So we'll just get this cut out real quick. I'll speed this up. So we have it cut out. Discard the trash. Get you some handy dandy tape. This, I like to measure for squareness to make sure that these are actually the same size all the way around. And if they're not, then I want to use the side that is less than a 1/2 inch. It's the same all the way around, it's fine. So then we can take this and we're going to somehow pick it up. And it just fits onto the dowel rod.
Oh.
And then I'll tape it on. Get a little piece of tape, put right here on the edge. Line it up as best as I can. And then just fold that tape over just to get it to hold for a split second. Another piece of tape, pull tension on it, make sure it's on cranked, and again, just a piece of tape to hold it. Now we have this on, take our punch again, mechanical punch, and then we're just going to hit the center marks. Real quick, this is for the motor plate landing gear, like I said. This is actually for a motor shaft if you're running like an NTM prop drive or anything where it has a reverse shaft that comes out. Instead of having to cut the shaft down, I'm going to have a center hole here that you can just drill out and then the shaft will ride through and you won't have to cut the shaft off the motor. Most people are going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore it. But I want to punch center holes for the motor plate and for the landing gear. Okay, now all that we really need to do is take this to a saw. I use a chop saw, but if you don't have a chop saw, an old style, and get a coping box so that you can get straight cuts. You can get a plastic coping box or plastic miter box for just a few dollars. Very handy to have, and that way you can get a really nice 90-degree angle cut. I'm going to walk away and I'm going to cut this real quick, and I'll come right back. I'm not going to show you because, I mean, it's just one chop of the wood. Okay, so we got a cut. As you can see, when I cut the end, I cut it right to the end of the paper, and that gave me the length I needed, and it also cut the tape so it just pops off, which is fine, because if you notice, when we punch the holes, the indentions are left. So we can use this for the other piece. Just tape it on, dink dink, punch our holes, tape it to the back, cut it out, and we're good. Now we need to drill the holes on this. I'm going to go ahead and move the camera so that you can see me drilling the holes. I use a drill press, which I recommend everybody get a drill press because they're fairly cheap at like Harbor Freight, and it just makes things so much easier. Okay, so drill press, it's a cheapie from Harbor Freight. I think it costs like $69, maybe $99. I don't know, it was fairly cheap. Speed, I have it pretty much on the fastest setting, which I mean is fine for what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to just basically pull the bit down while it's on, and then I'm going to be real loose on holding the piece, and that bit will actually find that divot and guide itself in. So let's see if we can drill one of these. So I just bring it down, and you'll feel it'll kind of catch it, and then you just push on through. Bring it down, and feel it, and then push on through. And then the last one. And that's all there is to drilling holes. Have our holes drilled, and we can put the motor plate on, line it up to make sure looks pretty good. We can even go ahead and get a couple screws. Thread through. Thread through. Holds the mount on. It's pretty much centered. I mean, it may be off a little bit, but as long as it's fairly centered, since we're just using a pattern and not measurement, but it's pretty much centered. The edge of the mount should be at the edge of this, and then we have this other hole drilled, which is where we're going to put the landing gear, and I'll drill that in a moment. But I wanted to at least show you how that works. So let's take one of our one of our Supo motors, and this is the hardware package it comes with. It comes with a prop adapter and 4 screws. Let's go ahead and put this mount on. See how it's going to work. So put all 4 screws in. Even though we don't really need all 4 screws, it actually helps keep the mount from bending under extreme pressure extreme forces, I should say. There's no pressure on it other than atmospheric, but and it's a good idea to use Loctite on this. I'm not using Loctite yet because it's not final installation, but before I fly this quad, I will definitely have a little bit of blue Loctite, not red, on the screws holding it in. Okay, mounts on. Now we need to see how we want it. We're going to want it just like that. Go ahead and put our screws back in, and all we're going to use these for is to hold it in place. We don't want to go ahead and lock it down yet. Just go ahead and sink them in. Let's see. Just to hold the motor on. Now let's take our frame plate, our bottom frame plate, and since this is front, hold on, let me knock this off. Basically what we're going to do is we want the motor wires to come on this side of the arm. Use the screw holes to line up the arm where it will sit. Go ahead and get one of our speed controls. This is a decased, de-wired, completely de-wired speed control. This is how I keep mine, because I never know what motor length or battery length or even what length wire I need on the signal. So I just keep them, I strip them down and keep them this way. They're easier to storage. Anyway, if we get them like this, it's easy to remember. The signal wire is the wire that is also connected to a small resistor. The middle wire is the power, and then the outside wire is the ground. Those are the servo leads. Signal, power, ground. Easy enough. You can tell which side is the positive or negative on the battery by where the cap goes. If you look, the cap says negative on the bottom, and then it has nothing up here, so this is positive. Well, the positive lead comes to this pad, so this is the positive for the batteries. This is negative to the battery. Then, of course, the motor wires are these three pads, and it doesn't matter because you run it to the motor, and then if it's reverse rotation, you swap any two of the wires, and it reverses the rotation of the motor for you. The way that we're going to run the speed controls in this frame is basically sitting them just like this. There'll be a speed control here, then one right next to it. In fact, I'll show you. So we'll have a speed control for that motor. I have a speed control for this motor. Then I use these distribution plates. These are power distribution plates from Value Hobby, and I'll put a link in the parts list. It has two pads for the batteries coming in, and then you can do a total of up to 8 pads. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wow, I'm bad at counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, do 8 motors, positive and negative, and you can tell which one is negative by where the battery lead comes in. If you can't see, but you will when you get this board. It's easier to see on this back side. Where this battery lead comes in, you can see a distinct track that goes to this inner circle. So if I put my negative on this battery lead, that means all of these become negatives or grounds, this inner circle. If I put it on this outer lead, then the outer circle becomes positive. And that's where I will mount the wires from the speed control. So we have two speed controls sitting here. Then we'll have the distribution board that'll butt right up to it. I'm going to drill 2 holes underneath where the battery wires are, so the battery wires will actually drop out of the bottom of the frame for me. Then you're going to have speed control. It goes to this back motor and arm. And then again on the other side, it goes to this side, this motor, and this arm. And then what you'll end up having is you'll have really small leads that just jump from here to here to here to here, and it'll keep everything inside the frame and nice and tidy. So we'll just have some motor wires running out. But I want to show you how to figure motor length, or how I figure motor length. I don't do any like big fancy calculation. First, we need some motor wires. This is my bin of wire. Let's find one that's fairly lengthy. Probably use this red or the black. Use the reds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use all red for the front 2 motors and then blacks for the rear 2. I think that'd be kind of nice. So here's what we want to do. Small piece of tape. Pull this motor wire down. These motor wires down. Little tape to hold them. We're going to end up putting bullet connectors on, and I'll show you how to do that. But for right now, I just want to get an approximation of wire length, and then I can solder my bullets on. So I'm going to line the arm up with the screw holes in the frame. This is where I want my speed control to go. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the furthest point away from the motor, hold that on, pull it tight because I want as little slack as I can, and go right to where the motor wires are cut, like right at the very end of them. And then that is the length that I'm going to make my motor wires. And I'm going to make all 3 that length. Even though it's set up for the one first out, I'm going to make them all that length, and it's going to give me a little bit of slack if I need it. So it's going to go straight out like that. And once I put bullets on both sides, it's going to give me another about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of length. So it's going to give me plenty, and then I can zip tie or strap the wires onto the arm. Once you do that, we need to, and I'm not going to show you how to strip and tin wire. This is, I mean, if you need to know how to do it, there's videos that I can find for you. I'll do one. But we're going to strip both ends. And then we want to solder the motor wires on at an angle like this, not straight out. But we want them to come off. So you're going to come off with the first one, and then this one, and then this one. And that will give us a, in fact, I've got one already done. It will give us, this is the wrong side. This is one I've already got done, and as you can see, what it does is it makes sure that the wires come straight out. So this sits back in the frame like we want it. We put the arm on, and as you can see, it's perfect. Like so. And our wires are long enough, they're not out of place, everything works good. So that's what we need to do, solder each one on at an angle. And then you don't have to solder the battery wires on yet. You'll actually have to find the length for those. So when we mount all this up, this is going to ride in here, and then you're going to make the shortest possible. As you can see, this negative goes right there. It's going to solder right there, and that positive goes right to there. Solders right there. That's it. And you're gonna have another one here, and then, you know, well, I'm gonna end up doing it, but you'll need to make your motor links yourself. You're gonna need to strip the wires, tin them, and then solder them on at angles like this for the motor wires. I'm doing red's front, black's back. You can do whatever you want. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and finish up and cut the rest of my arms. I'm going to solder the rest of my wires on, and I should note this: when I strip them, the heat sinks come off. They're not glued on. You don't necessarily need to run the heat sinks, but I just wanted to on a couple of them. Actually, I usually always run them on the one that has the BEC that I'm using for BEC because it runs hotter than the others. However, you don't necessarily have to run them. I would go ahead and run them just so you don't, you know, mess them up or overheat them. And the way I put them on is I put the heatsink back on and I just put a piece of tape around it. If you want to, you can get some shrink tubing and shrink tube it on. I don't, because I don't know what size it requires, and I don't feel like buying anything from Hobby King. So anyway, let me do the rest of this, finish the arms, and then I'll come back.